When you think of a book review site, you think of Goodreads, right? Well, let me introduce you to Novellic. I took a trip to their offices to find out what they are and what they're not.
Hello, welcome to Novellic. This is our office. This is where we sort of have our lunch usually, and also where we host our guests for small meetings. And if you come on in, this is our hidden space. So this is where I work, and that's where my co-founder sits. And we also have a nice little reading nook at the end there for just winding down and reading some of the lovely books that publishers send us. My name is Candide Kirk and I'm the founder of Novellic. I'm also the product designer and I do most of the development on the front end. So Novellic is an app for readers. It does book recommendations and it also hosts book clubs. So we have tools for book clubs to come in, set up their communities. And we also have this space where readers can ask for very specific book recommendations and other readers can come in and sort of suggest books against those. One of the things that we sort of consciously decided when we were designing Novellic is this wasn't going to be a space for reviews and star ratings. And the reasoning behind that was because we wanted to create this safe space for authors and we wanted them to be able to come in and host their own communities, start their own book clubs and grow their own readership on our app. And we wanted to do this without the noise of reviews and sort of the judgment that comes along with star ratings. We very deliberately were conscious that Goodreads is the dominant space for book communities for readers. What we're offering is not an alternative to that per se. So you could like have your Goodreads account and then also have your Novellic account because they do very different, they serve very different purposes.
And you mentioned the book clubs. Can anyone create a book club then?
Anyone can create a book club. We find that book clubs tend to fall within two categories. So you'd either have big open public book clubs with tens or even hundreds of users. We have influencers who've done that, for example, and it tends to be what the book club organizer wants to read, so they'll change that up either weekly or monthly. Sometimes they'll set like a reading pace, they'll do like chapters 1 to X for a week or two and sort of talk about that. But then the more interesting book clubs that we find are the smaller groups, the neighborhood book clubs, the workplace book clubs, the friends reading together, and they tend to be more private. There's a lot more discussion going on there and sharing of book recommendations and a lot more book chat going on.
You mentioned before that it's quite female dominated. Can you talk more about the demographic and who your main audience is?
Sure, so 78% of our users are women and our largest demographic is the 25 to 35 age group as well. We're quite popular within commercial fiction genres, so fantasy, for example, is our number one, followed very closely by crime and thrillers, and YA is also quite big as well. So within those three genres, we also find that our users are adding a lot more books written by women. So we recently did a study and over 60% of the books on our lists have been written by female authors, which we think ties in very strongly with our readership as well.
You said you did a study. How often do you do sort of market research?
So this is something that this is a service that we provide to publishers. So we have anonymized data that is coming in from our readers. We are continuously tracking the book trends coming out, the genre trends, as well as specific titles that might not even be on the radar of, say, big publications or like big marketing spend, word of mouth, that sort of thing. So we tend to do monthly reports and then we'll do a big quarterly roundup that just sort of follows the trends. It was really interesting when we did this throughout the pandemic. We were tracking like genres because we launched in October 2020, so sort of after lockdown 1, but still halfway through the COVID pandemic. It was really interesting looking at the genres that were quite popular then and then how they sort of fell out of fashion and what has picked up since then. And this is something that we share with publishing partners as well.
What do you envision to be the new trends moving forward as well? Because you said it changed then. What do you think it's going to change to now?
We're seeing a lot more, it's magical realism meets historical fiction. So it's books like When We Were Dragons, but it's that sort of time era where, you know, there's this big political message, but it's sort of very magical realism. We still continuously see crime being very popular. Cozy crime peaked, I think we're past that peak, but, you know, was very popular a few months ago as well. We did track that. It's very interesting taking a granular look at not just at the genres as headlines, but even breaking through beneath the surface and looking at these subgenres and what readers are sort of getting into.
And how do you get that sort of data? How do the books appear on Novellic?
We have multiple book sources, which just means our readers can add any books that they like onto the app. They don't have to be pre-approved by us or even added manually by our editorial team. So by searching and adding books to the list, it just grows the recommendation pool. So if a book has been added by one reader and then 5,000 other readers have added another book, they both get recommended in the exact same way. And that just positively propagates the recommendations across the app.
You're obviously in your lovely office. Are you here every day?
We are here every day, yes. It got a bit tiring working from home, so we couldn't wait to move in here as soon as we could. So we've been here a year and a bit now.
So you said that Novellic started in 2020. Were you there from the very start then, being the founder?
Yes, so the idea for it actually is a bit older than that. So we've been kind of working on different iterations of what Novellic looks like and what it is both to the readers and to publishers since 2017, I would say. It was quite unfortunate that at the start of 2020 we kind of had plans to be a bookseller as well, and we were working on sort of fulfillment strategies, and a few of our partners kind of didn't survive the initial lockdown, went into administration. So what happened was actually a happy accident, because we ended up working with bookshop.org. We ended up creating more tools for publishers for promotion rather than focusing on book selling, for example, and focusing more on the benefits and the value added to readers.
So as a business, how do you earn your revenue? Is that a percentage from bookshop.org, or is that from advertising from publishers?
So our business model actually relies on working with publishers. So we run promotions on the app, so we can do things like cover reveals, pop-ups for book birthdays on release days. They're actionable, so you can add to your TBR immediately off of that one pop-up, and you can also buy or pre-order the book. We also run branded promoted collections on the app. So a publisher can come along with either a themed collection, or if they have a big author with a sizable list, they could run a campaign for them on the app there. We also do things like book club packs, like read-along guides and extra additional information that we can then send out on behalf of publishers to book clubs on the app reading that book. It's been difficult as outsiders to the publishing industry to sort of really get the message over of what it is we're trying to build. We don't sit in a very identifiable space, because again, we don't do the reviews, we don't do the star ratings, so it's not easy to sort of put us in a box. We're not a social media platform. But how we can help you, how we can ride on to your marketing campaigns and your publicity campaigns leading up to release, but also months after, years after a book has been published, is just in helping get that word of mouth going, get the recommendations going, putting that in front of readers. When a publisher releases a book, the marketing and publicity usually revolves around release day, maybe up to, say, a couple of weeks after, but all the activities ahead of launch and then working up to launch. On the app, what we see is it picks up 6 to 9 months afterwards. So it doesn't necessarily match up with what is popular now. It needs to be what is popular in the future, in the very near future, but in the future nonetheless. And I know it must be like a bit frustrating, because you sort of, if you're an author, you're looking at the sales trends and you're expecting it to just go like, oh wow, it released, why is my book not talked about, or why are book clubs not reading my book? But book clubs, in particular book clubs, they don't tend to read what has just been released right now. It does take a bit of work to get the word of mouth up and running. So that's where we are. So we're working along this sliding scale of 6 months behind, 3 months ahead. And so we're looking at like what the trends that will be popular on the app are. And that might also be an opportunity for backlist titles. So we see resurgence of trends all the time as well. And people, when they read something that they're absolutely in love with and they'll want something similar, if the pipeline of what is coming out isn't going to feed that, then they will start looking at books that came out 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And that's where the word of mouth recommendation really kicks in, because that's when someone's going to say like, oh, yeah, I did read that. And, we were talking about Kindred the other day. So, that's the sort of book and the sort of recommendation that would kick in.
And then more about your actual role, so more personal. What do you actually enjoy the most and what do you find challenging?
My role is in thinking up all of these features and all of these different creative ways that we can serve the readers but also work with publishers. So I'm happiest when I'm either sketching away or working on the front end and creating all these new pages and new screens and new features, which tends to mean that I'm inside my head and it's me and the screen where I kind of fail and fall flat on my faces in communicating all of this. So thank you for this opportunity today, because that's the biggest challenge for us.
A lot of my audience is sort of the people that want to work in publishing, and though this isn't a publishing house, it still is in the publishing world. What sort of advice do you have for people that might want to work at a place like Novellic, and what sort of skills do you need?
At Novellic, our team is quite diverse. We've got editorial people looking at content, people reviewing the books all the time, going through the book list, going through the recommendations. What I would say is you need to not just look at publishing industry, you need to look outside of it as well. What's happening in TV, what's happening in film, what's trending where. We're looking at stories. Ultimately, our consumers are reading stories, whether they're reading them with their eyes or their ears as podcasts or audiobooks, or if they're watching a series based on a book or a film based on a book. All of this is driving what they read next. We saw this very clearly with the big Netflix shows and big Hulu shows, and The Handmaid's Tale, for example, a fairly old publication, but that just dragged a whole genre of reading behind it and probably did a lot more book selling than a lot of what we're trying to do within publishing ourselves.
So what is the future of Novellic?
We're at the stage where we're looking at how better can we serve the publishing industry, but also the wider creative industries. So we're looking at how our insights and the analytics, and as we grow the community, we're getting a lot more useful information, a lot more data points and data sets about reader habits, the trends. So this is where we are at the moment. We're looking at, we have this treasure trove, we have this absolute toy box of information that's coming in daily, and how do we use that to benefit the creative industries and publishing.
And based on what you said about being a Goodreads alternative, you don't have future plans to have reviews or star ratings on there?
Not at all, no. We have absolutely no plans to add any reviews or star ratings, because that's not where our readers are. We're looking more at enhancing the reader goals and the shareability of a lot of the content. So one of the things that we'd like to do is help readers share their reading lists in a very nice graphical way onto their socials, be able to recommend outside of Novellic as well. Ideally, what we want to do is sort of be the book recommendation platform, regardless of whether you're on the app or not.
You mentioned social media. Are you on all social media? Do you use it actively?
So yeah, we do. I'm not the social media expert. Hannah is. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Yeah, no, we are on socials.